Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Center for Victory webinar, Onboarding Essentials. This came out of the last webinar. People just asking about, hey, look, what should we use? What should we start with? Some of us don't have anything. Some of us want to add more to what we have. So what we're going to do here is just walk down kind of a step-by-step. Most of it is going to revolve around, of course, the predictive index. I will go through what we do here in our onboarding. Some of the other assessments that I mentioned, some of you may have, some of you may not have them. But I think for the most part, everybody on here, I think we had about 80 sign up for this. So I think most of that list are current predictive index clients. If you're not and want to continue the dialogue after this webinar, please give us a contact here. We're going to get started. Again, this is just step-by-step kind of what we do day one, or what some best practices would be day one as you bring people on and continue on with your talent development. The first document, of course, that we always give out. So this should, what we do here, you can either bind all these documents together. What we like is a workable document. So I like to put it in a, just a small 1/2 inch or 1 inch binder so that we can refer back to it. And you'll understand that a little bit more later when we talk about, how to continue to roll this out. Obviously, the first report that goes in there is the 3-page report from the predictive index with the self-concept and synthesis on them. All right, but it's the 3-pager. The other document that we include in there are the values index. Okay, this is not in your PI software. This is an additional assessment that we utilize here that some of our other clients utilize as well. We've had other webinars specifically on this instrument. What this measures is motivation or passion, so we like to talk about that up front, especially if it has something to do with our culture. And then the last one we discuss is the attribute index of how people see the world and how people see themselves. What this does is sets us up for future planning and future development of that person. All right, this particular one, especially the attribute, can be taken over again, and we're looking for role awareness, self-esteem, self-direction, those pieces there. Now, one of the suggestions that I would make is you have the person day one, and this should be almost as soon as they walk in, spend some time reading over these 3 reports. After you have them read over those 3 reports, what I would suggest is just to give a read back on all 3 and how they all 3 tie together. If you don't have all 3, then absolutely do the read back with the PI. For those of you that have gone through the 2-day certification training, you would have gotten instruction on how to do that read back. There's forms in your materials that you got and received during that training. If you forget and would like a refresher on that, please let us know. But there's a read back form right in the material. It goes through A, B, C, and D. It goes over the factor, emphasis, combinations, touches a little bit on the self-concept, which, onboarding, I wouldn't get too much into detail on that just because that's from where they were previously at. I would spend the time talking about them as a person, talking about how those factor, emphasis, combinations are powerful, and knowing that 3D picture of themselves and the person, so they get a good grasp of, really what's going on inside of their role. and inside the company. And then, of course, as we roll out some other documents on this onboarding process to really look at, how how those reports interplay with a lot of these other documents that we're going to talk about. That suggested time, there was a question, I'm going to answer it right now because there was a question that already came in earlier. One of the questions was, what do you suggest as far as time frame for this? Suggested time frame for this would probably be at least an hour to an hour and a half to do it right. And again, some people are going to say, well, that's a lot of time. Well, you can do it right up front, or you can be doing it again with somebody else down the road. My suggestion would be take the time, spend that time, ask good questions, facilitate that. Don't just rush through it. I know the feedback that I've heard from some other people were, well, I didn't get any kind of read back. All I got was the report, or hey, look, I took some kind of assessment up front. Are there any results from that? I got hired, and can you help me out? So have that just part of your internal onboarding process, but have it be ongoing, right? Just go over that PI and just do it one time, it's kind of difficult. So you want to do it, and I'm going to give you a way that we recommend to do that on a consistent basis that's repetitive in nature as well. But suggested time with that is 1 to 1.5 hours. The other thing that I would do there is, if this is somebody that you perceive that might be going through the training, I would still do the read back. But in that time, give them some suggested training material. It could be the half-day training. It could be the one-day training. We do a lot of that internally for our clients. So that's the 1 day managing people to perform. Or if they're going to be doing the certification training, the 2-day certification training, tell them that, hey, they'll be getting more, and they'll be getting an understanding of that, a deeper understanding of it with the 2-day training. As we move on, the other thing that I would also include in those onboarding documents is the placard. And again, this can be taken right from your PI system. It's right in the software. The placard is just a quick snapshot. You can give some instruction with this. I know some companies that we work with, they put the placard right outside the office of a person, or right on the cubicle. Some don't, some do. I would say the vast majority of our clients, when I walk through, I see it somewhere. So this is just a quick snapshot of the person. That gives you just the A, B's, and C's. It's using the self, and that's what we want to use. And it gives the reference pattern up there as well. The other document that I would include in your onboarding is the personal development chart. And this is for the person. What it does, again, it uses the data from the PI in an objective way. So you'll see that this person here, this made-up person, Evan, high A, high B, low C, low D. What it does nicely is give the strengths of that particular drive, gives the cautions, and then gives some self-coaching tips, objective self-coaching tips. Again, this is day one. Should just create some awareness for that person, what they have to look forward to, what some possible strengths are, but gives them the opportunity to look at what some potential blind spots are as well, and starts to have that conversation between themselves and the manager about, hey, these are some things that we really want in the role. These are some things that we do want in the role, but at times you're going to have to pull back and do some things here or there. Just make sure you continue to bring this out in conjunction with the discussion with the personal development chart. My suggestion would also be alongside of that would be to print out and put in that document the coaching guide. For those of you that aren't familiar with the coaching guide, you might be familiar with the interview guide. The interview guide is much like the coaching guide in that fact that it overlays the job assessment right onto that person's PI. For those of you that aren't familiar with the system, what you see in orange is the job target. The job target for this particular person, this is a sales manager position, is a high A, high B, low C, low D, but it's a cutback D. So you'll see there's a little bit of a gap in that D drive. Here you can provide, you're setting yourself up to provide objective feedback for that person in the future. Again, it's not subjective, right? You're looking at the analytics and saying, hey, look, here's what we know about this position. This position requires a little bit of detail, right? It requires you to go a little bit inch wide, mile deep on some things and follow up with some things. And here's a potential blind spot that you might have. Now, fortunately, we've put this person in the right position. This is a pretty good fit, but there's probably going to be times where this person might go off the rails a little bit. This is a good way to put them back on track, get them back on track and say, hey, look, there are certain things that you have to do. There's certain things that you can't do. Here are some instances of that, and you're giving them objective feedback. And again, especially for a person that's wired like this, making sure it's objective so then it doesn't feel like micromanagement to this person. One of the things I would also do here again is just to review this, making sure you're bringing in the PI, anything that you've gone through the read back, and then getting some potential input from the person to say, hey, look, has this ever happened before? But also reinforcing to that person, this is why we hired you. This is why we brought you on. This is what we're going to do for you. And if you're a really good manager that's used to this and has some repetition with this guide and things, what I would do is also refer back to the summary of motivating needs here. For those of you that have been through any of the training, this would be found in your toolkit, the gray toolkit on page 6. And what that might look like for this particular person is that summary of motivating needs, high A. So what this person is going to need is a little bit more freedom and independence to act independently on their own. They're going to need their thumbprint on some things. So what that means in onboarding, hey, we're going to have to speed up the onboarding process for you, right? Because with that low C. High B, they're going to need some face-to-face time, but their need to lead is going to be a little bit greater than their need to please. Low C, hey, look, I'm going to give you about 7 or 8 things coming out of the gate. This is why I'm doing it. If you feel like there's a crack in quality, let me know. I'll pull back a little bit. Tell me how I can challenge you. And then the D drive, hey, look, I'm not going to try to micromanage you, but there are some things. Here are 3 things that we have to do. Here are 3 things that you cannot do. Are we clear? But I'm going to give you free rein unless you get off the rails. Then I'm going to pull you back. So I would also go through that with them as well. Here's what I want you to concentrate on. I've been having a lot of discussions with our clients on this. This is the manager scorecard inside of your PI software. It is noted as the manager strategy guide, manager strategy, but we refer to it here as the manager scorecard because that's essentially what it is. What we do, this is done every 90 days. Okay, so let me emphasize that every 90 days. This is not something that you do just once a year. I wouldn't even recommend doing it twice a year, but if you're only doing it once a year now, go ahead and do it twice and settle into that every 90-day period. What you are doing here is whoever you manage, you're using their PI. So in this case, we started with Evan. We're going to continue with Evan. Evan is grading his manager on what he believes that his manager, whatever she or he does or provides for Evan. Now, when you first onboard, day one, obviously you're not going to have Evan fill this out. My suggestion, though, would be to have this printed out so you can tell Evan, day 90, we're going to do this. And then we're going to do it day 180, day 270, and then at a year. At the time that you're going to go over this with Evan, day one, I would suggest that you put it in your calendar 90 days out. And that's just because I know most of you say, hey, that's a great idea. And then you forget about it in 90 days. And then it doesn't get done, and it doesn't get done. And you're 6 months in, you've forgotten about it. Maybe you come back to it, but go ahead and put it in your calendar. Just go 90 days out, put it right in your calendar, and have that done sometime the week of when that 90-day review is supposed to be done. You know, what a lot of our clients do here is we have the person that's who we're using, so the supervisee and the supervisor both do it separately, then we bring it together and we compare notes. I might have said, well, Evan, like, I think I give you challenges and solicit your input, but you're saying I don't. Help me understand how I can do more of that, or let me share with you the ways I think I do, and maybe I just need to do more of. Or maybe it's day 90 and I can't give you all the freedom and independence that you want. Maybe you need to work into that. Okay, so it's that discussion back and forth. But what this scorecard has done and will continue to do is provide more of a facilitation rather than an interrogation between the direct report and their supervisor. But it also gets a supervisor on board with, hey, look, I want to be here as part of your development. We're just not going to do a performance review at the end of every year and let me tell you everything you did well and let me tell you everything you did poorly without giving you any kind of indication over the last 12 months how you're doing. And maybe you're sitting there asking, if you haven't seen this yet, you know, what are some good questions to have around that? The second page of the scorecard or the management strategy guide is, what have you done well? What can you do better? Some of the other things that I would suggest that the supervisor do here. What have we done well? What can we do better? How can I help that person better their role? Can I give them more clarification? Is it something that I've learned in one of those boxes? I'm going to give an example here that Morgan and I have been working on. Her 1 year is due this week. So we were just having the discussion this morning on this because when we go back and look at her scorecard, there's one that we agree on that isn't checked yet, and it's been bothering us for about the past 6 months. It's like, well, how can we make that happen? Right? What else can we do to kind of check that box? Not just to check it, but actually put some thought into it. And what would that look like for her, for me, so we could better utilize her, because she's still being underutilized because she's picking up things this past year. And that would bring us down to that specific action for the next 90 days. All right. And again, at this point in time, so now it's 90 days out, I'm doing it again. You know, here's what we're going to do. What else can we do? What else can we build upon? What are some blockers? And this is where I like to hear from, my direct reports. Maybe not like to hear, but I want to hear, maybe not always like it, but I like to hear the input. What's preventing us from carrying out the action plan? Is it me? Am I being, am I keeping that person stuck? And then set a date here. It might be some metrics or whatever, but set a date that you're going to reevaluate that progress. And I would suggest here to set some big goals. I know one of the things that we do internally here is I like to know what's going on personally in folks' lives. What are some personal goals, because I know that can impact the work environment. Um, so it's always good to throw that in here. But I strongly suggest that you do this every 90 days. Just have that discussion, go back, look at the coaching guide, look at that development chart and say, what else can we do here? One of the other things that we put inside that onboarding packet is the relationship guide. I know many of you are using this. I would use it again every 90 days. Just look at it. The nice thing about this relationship guide is you can take two people, and here we have Evan, and then we have Kim, who's Evan's supervisor. So we have the strengths of that, very complementary in nature. What are some of the cautions? Those cautions might go right into that manager scorecard that we just talked about. And then the relationship tips, again, that could go right into the scorecard. That could be part of that developmental plan for the next 90 days. Because a lot of times when we know, we can avoid. So you're making that person more self-aware of what's going on. So this is most of that was good news up front in your onboarding. Now we're getting into the bad news. Here's you, Evan. Here's me. We're different. How do we get along? And that's where I would include the supervisors, and whoever that manager or leader is, their report to. So I can remember a year ago when we did this with Morgan, had that folder already day one. We're going through it. That's all the good news. And I said, are you ready for the bad news? And I gave her my PI, jokingly, but there's some truth to that. Like, this is why I hired you. You're very detailed. So when I'm not being that, I'm not coming in every day meaning to disrupt you and be a pain in the rear end. We have to work together. How can we best work together? Because we have a lot of different drives where we can be more complementary and get more things done. One of the other things that you could put in there as well is the group analytics. Now, if you need some help with this, I know we do this a lot for our clients and go over it. If you don't know what it's saying in this particular one, the suggestion might be, hey, here's your team. For Evan, it's like, okay, well, general consensus is, we have a mixture of everybody. So everybody needs different things, Evan. You're going to fit in nicely to this group. Here's how. Here's some cautions. And then if time is warranted and you want to do it, some of our clients do it, some of them don't. But you can also include the factor emphasis combinations. And for Evan, what that would mean is, hey, Evan, most people are like you. They're very proactive. They're very quick to connect. But just be cautious. We do have some people on the team that don't like that fast pace like you do, and that's kind of down here, right? There are some people that follow the rules more than you. So every once in a while, you're going to have to slow down and give people what they need to move forward. And then if you're really ambitious, you could also include these different teamwork styles. Again, this is in everybody's PI system. I would encourage you to use this. However, if you don't understand what it's saying, because there's several reports here, get with us, get with your consultant. You can call in, spend some time with us going over it before you just hand that to somebody. More than likely, I would say the majority of you use this after that person's been there a while, after they can understand their team. I like to do it up front just to show people, hey, look, this is who we are. This is how you fit in. This is why we brought you on, and go into the details of that. But you can see there are different reports here. Some of you are familiar with it. I'm just going through the tabs on the teamwork styles. taking action. You can see here that this particular team, there's not a lot of coordinating. Yeah, I don't know if that may or may not be an issue, but it's just something to bring up. Okay, so there's different reports that you can utilize here. All this, I'd put into a nice onboarding packet, and then just to re-emphasize, every 90 days, you're going to pull that back out, go over that with that person. One of the things that we do here, this is not the whole document. This is just a snapshot that we put together for you. It's just a 90-day passport. I think we've done a few of these over the years for folks. And really, I think I showed it last time. This is how the questions come up with the onboarding for this particular webinar. But this is just a small document that goes through day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, week 1, week 2, week 2, or 3, week 4, then month 1, month 2, until you get up to 90 days. All right, these are the things that keep people in line to show them what is expected of them. Am I on track? Okay, and it needs signed off by the manager. But it's just a nice little document to go through. And I want to give, am I on camera? Yeah, you can see my face, because I'm going to share something. It's just, it's probably the best. And this happened to me last week. I happened to be down in the Memphis area, and one of our clients, a young lady there that's ahead of the talent for one of our clients, put together an absolute wonderful policy and procedure manual that I myself would read. And that's saying a lot from Lois D. But it's a very nice policy and procedure manual. As you can see, it's very colorful. It goes over the who, I've never seen one yet like this, talking about, the customers, our people, everybody. They even went into explaining for all their people, nice little shout out to us, about how they utilize PI within their company and what everybody should expect with the utilization of that tool. But thank you. I want to give a shout out to Rachel down at Whitmore for putting that together. Boy, did you put together a great week, you folks down there. I'm thankful to be part of that. But this is a great gem. I mean, it's a nice little book. Actually feels good in your hands. Very high glossy pages, but it grabs that attention. I don't know. Maybe I'm just, maybe I just was enamored with it a little bit, but I actually read through it. It makes sense. I would sign off on something like that and say, yes, I actually did read that. So one of the things that you might want to do as far as your teams, instead of having one that just doesn't really look that great or has a bunch of words, this one it's very concise, to the point, very colorful. There was a lot, you can tell that there was a lot of thought put into it. Okay, before we get to questions, just some upcoming events. The next webinar, February 26th, Inspiring Workers to Do Great Work. Next training, February 25th and 26th. That one's in Cranberry. That's open to anybody. Be a good time for some of you. I know we've already had a couple emails come in about, is this a good time for a refresher? Absolutely, because the next one after that's April 21st and 22nd. Those are just some upcoming events. We have a lot of speaking engagements coming up as well. You can get our calendar online for that if you would like. I think we had a question. Will questions come through? Okay. Good question. So I'm going to read this off. I know, hey, Eric, I know that you all use the traction process as we do here at Lumina. So shout out to Nashville down in Lumina. Carmen. My question is around the management strategy guide and relationship guide and reviewing it every 90 days. Do you think this would be something good to add to quarterly conversations or do it completely separately? That's a very good question. I would do it as part of that quarterly conversation as well, Carmen. That's a great question. But if there's not enough time, I would also do, walk into that separately. For those of you that aren't familiar with traction, it also encourages people to have these discussions every 90 days, the get-togethers. For those that aren't part of that leadership team, Carmen, one of the things that I would suggest is your managers, and I know you're pushing this down to them as well, that they would have some kind of document, that manager scorecard, that they are doing every 90 days with people. And I can't reinforce that enough. One of the things that's nice about doing that every 90 days is you have that chance to find out what's going on with people before they get up and get ready to leave. So you have time to course correct. Hey, what are we doing well? What are we not doing so well? And gives that person a time to, kind of air things out. But those are good questions to bring into those quarterly conversations as well. Any other questions? A question in my email here. Coaching guide. Is the coaching guide part of, can we locate that in the PI software? Yes, you can locate that in the PI software. One of the things that you need to make sure that you do is you need to make sure whoever that person is, that they're connected to a job assessment. So my guess is if you're not seeing that, then they're not connected to a job assessment. So go in there and, you can edit the person, connect them to a job assessment. As soon as they're connected to a job assessment, then you can go in the left-hand column there and hit coaching guide, and that should be able to generate that report for you. I don't see any other questions. I'll give it another few seconds, and if not, we'll be done for today. So very good questions. Thank you very much for tuning in. There was one question that came up at the top of the hour, and I believe Morgan already answered this, but the question was, are these videotaped? Yes, you can go on our YouTube channel, Center for Victory, and get these. They're taped, they're uploaded. Morgan does a great job with getting these uploaded before the end of the day that the webinar has taken place. So that will be up by the end of business today, pending good internet connection and all that good stuff. But you can do that. Feel free to share them with anybody. They don't have to be trained for you to share them. Actually, if you're one of the few people inside your company that are trying to really push down the PI and all the concepts into your company, that's a great way to get these videos out, because they're nice, they're short, they're to the point. And then that gives you a basis for further topics down the road. One of the things that I did want to mention before we got off of here, because it did come in as a question and I forgot it came in before today, was can you workshop these as part of our tune-ups? Absolutely, we'd be happy to do this. We'd spend some more time, do a couple examples for you, live examples for people that are working together, but we'll go through all this with, so if you have a group of your managers together, we can do a nice 90-minute, any of the consultants can do a nice 90-minute overview of your onboarding process. But I would also suggest you leave at least a half an hour up to an hour to discuss action plans of how you're going to roll it out and get consensus of how you're going to roll it out and use it. Because today was just what we do internally. It's what I would suggest as best practice. You don't have to do it that way. There are some other documents that you might want to put in, that you need to put in. There's some other ones that you might want to subtract from there. These are just some suggestions that came out of the last webinar that you all asked that what, hey, what do we do? What do we prescribe to as best practice? So can we do that for you? Yes, we'd be happy to come in and further go down into some details about how you create a great onboarding experience and continue that development of that person within your company to keep them engaged, keep them productive, and keep them efficient. There's no other questions coming in, so we'll end that for today. Appreciate all you being on the call because I know you're busy, but we'll see you next time. Hopefully we'll see all of you February 26th, 12 p.m. Eastern, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.